Welcome to another episode of Box Report, episode 290. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News, Daniel from the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
We are here. We are starting your week right. If you're not here, you're nothing.
What she said, you're nothing. Nothing.
And if you're not listening, you don't even know that you're nothing. That's even worse.
For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, my YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog, discussing all things boxing. The motto is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all information, if you're watching live on YouTube, just please check out the description underneath, where it provides all the info on where to find us on social media, where you can donate, where to find us on all platforms that carry proper RSS feed. Like I said, where you can donate, and you can also check it out on the blog page, p4pboxreport.wordpress.com, where you can also find where to find us all over social media, where you can donate. Also, my fitness page. I am an online coach for Beachbody. A lot of special deals happening right now since a lot of people are still quarantined. 2-week trials running concurrent throughout the year. So yeah, if you want to get your fitness game up, if you want to get your fitness game going during this time, during this crisis, during this pandemic, please check out my coaching page on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. Let's get things going. Recapping things that went down this past week, and going to start with an upset. I kind of hinted at this a little bit in last week's show. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody who joined us right now on the live YouTube chat. Sean, Sin, what's up? Thanks for joining us. Please, if you got any comments or questions throughout the show, please provide. And also make sure to hit that like button here. And also, if you're checking us out on iTunes, Spotify, and whatnot, please make sure to hit that like button in there and subscribe on both platforms. 5-star review on iTunes will get read during the show. Back to the beginning. Upset. Kind of hinted at this last week, Gail, that this may happen. Fight taking place in Vegas on the top ranked card. Joshua Greer, who was ranked number 1 by the WBO at 118 pounds, fought a Filipino fighter by the name of Plania. When I was watching the tapes of Plania before the fight and before our preview last week, I was noting that he could really give Greer some trouble, and he indeed did that. Knocked Greer down twice with the same punch, left hooks. And Greer kept getting hit with that left hook for the most of the fight. He didn't really adjust until the last 2 rounds when he fought on the front foot, applied pressure. And Plania, he started to show some signs of fatigue, but by that time it was too little too late. Plania getting the majority decision win. And dare I say, upset during the era of COVID-19, Gail. Your thoughts?
Not going to be the last one either. You know, a lot of these guys are coming out of altered training at best. You know, it's been rough on them. So not everyone's up to speed. You know, we get 3, 4, 5, 6 more months in. This isn't as likely to happen. You know, truth be told, though, Michael, we were talking about this fight last week. I'm not sure it's an enormous upset. It definitely an upset. Interestingly enough, the Filipino and Asian fans betting in Vegas made it, you know, much more of an even call. And Plania came to play. Plania was not there for a paycheck. He comes from the same hometown as Manny Pacquiao. He's under the Pacquiao flag in general, out of General Santos City. Hungry kid, big shot. He's on network TV in America and around the world. He was not going to let that go by him. And we have seen several of these. He had the tools to do it. You know, Greer has had some shaky outings. He has changed trainers. He's, had to make a comeback before. Well, he's going to have to do it again. He's flashy. He's a great interview. He's a likable guy. I do not like the E word. I refuse to say the E word on this show, but might have been a bit of E word going on in that fight. Yeah, he could not stay away from Plania's left hand. And the minute Plania and his team figured that out, they just went for it. And he got the job done. Really, really good performance by decision. He was extremely emotional when he got that decision. Absolutely super, super, super effort.
I'll go to you, Daniel. I've always I've had reservations about Greer. I've never trusted his chin. He's been down twice in previous fights prior to this defeat. That's number one. Number two, I put him in the category of, in a sense, a Vinny Pazienza. And what I mean by that is he is a guy that has fast hands, but I don't consider him a real, true boxer. He moves his head, but he can still get hit. And you saw it in this fight. He moved his head, but he kept getting hit with the left hand, in part because he kept his chin up. He didn't do a good job of tucking his chin. And it was, yet still, it was a bit startling that he kept getting hit with that punch over and over. And it wasn't like Plania was hiding the punch very well. He wasn't really. He would kind of telegraph. He would just whip it in there real fast, and there was no adjustment again until late in the fight. Your observation of what you saw, your observation of Greer now in the aftermath of this fight.
That's probably my biggest about when he came to the fight. He didn't tuck his chin in because he was doing good head movement. But if you don't do good head movement and keep your chin in, you're going to get caught. And he got caught more than once. But the main thing you also take away from it is that he got up, he looked face, but he know he got caught. And another thing is like he didn't make adjustments until the middle, like near the end of the 8th round. Interesting enough, just as Plania started to look like he was tiring. Had Greer more than likely done what he did in the last 2 rounds earlier, and he probably would have fared better in this fight. The 2 knockdowns, though, ultimately did do it in. Plania now has this. Now can build on this and maybe a couple more wins, get himself into that title picture, especially with not a lot happening right now as far as actual fights in bantamweight. And it's right now trying to fight for number 2 because we know anyway it's right there. So not like you're fighting for number 1.
Greer was ranked number 1 by the WBO, as I mentioned. WBO champion currently is Uriel Casamero of Philippines, who is the countryman of Plania. I go back to you, Gail, and you can talk about this as well, Daniel. I believe both men have sparred each other in the past. With Greer out of the picture now temporarily, do you think that Casamero, I know he's talking about in a way, we don't know if that fight will happen next. Do you think we will see an a showdown of all Filipinos for that WBO title next? It would kind of make sense, given.
It absolutely would make sense. Yeah, they have been sparring partners in the past, so it's certainly doable. They know each other well. And if we do not get a Inoue Casamero fight right away, if both these guys say, yeah, tune-ups are in order, hell, Plania has certainly earned it. And I like it. It's the kind of fight that top ranked matchmakers like. And what I also like, especially if Plania feels like he can get right back in here pretty quick, they're putting a lot of the smaller weight division guys on these cards right now. What I think of as kind of the pandemic era cards. If I'm Plania, I seize the moment, man. I get right in there. First good offer. If that's it, you better take it. Because a lot of these guys, the big mistake they make is they don't ride the momentum. And they go, oh, maybe I better think about it. I don't know. I'll bet you anything. Whatever Plania's purse was last week, I should look it up. Somebody in you in the live comments, Sean Fitzgerald, Gus, I'm counting on you. What the hell was Plania's purse? I'll bet you it was in the $40,000 range, whatever it was. I bet you anything that's the biggest check he's ever made. Now he should be getting quite a bit more if he's going to be, in a fight against Casimero. I say go for it, man. What's he got to lose? Absolutely nothing. I like it.
And you can talk about that as well, Daniel. But also in terms of Greer, where does he go from here? How far do you think it will? How long do you think it will take for him to get back in the world title picture? Because he was on the cusp of having a world title shot prior to this upset.
As far as Greer goes, he's going to give him a bet. Luckily, he's already shown to be available. So a couple of tune-up fights might be in it, but he's probably not gonna smell another title picture, or at least a chance at the title for a year. Focus now is the title picture 2021. As far as Plania's go, that's actually a good fight. That's actually a good fight with him and Casimero, because they do know each other so well. And it's probably the easiest fight to make, because you probably want to keep these guys as active as, because you don't know what situations are coming up. You don't know how, in many ways, the resurgence of the pandemic in certain states can affect fighters who live in those states. So maybe it's even less availability at the moment. So definitely make that fight now, because it might be the best time.
That's a very good point. By the way, folks, I was right on the money. About the money, he did make $40,000 purse for that last fight. So they can easily afford to pay him more than that and not break the bank. The other plus is when you've got these Asian fighters and they're in Vegas, particularly Filipino fighters, I will say, the betting goes way up. The betting action tends to be pretty healthy considering, the times we're in. That is another way that revenue gets brought in. That does not make the MGM Grand upset at all to be hosting this. They're eating quite a bit of the cost to stage this bubble arrangement that they've got with Top Rank. So you get betting action going, as a little bit of a substitute for a gate. That's all good.
Indeed. I see a comment here in the chat. I'll show it here for everybody to see. Gus from Corruption in Boxing said you should play some. You're right, Gus. You're right. He said you should have played some hefty dollars on the Filipino brother getting the upset. You're right, because I could see it. I didn't pull the trigger all the way, but I could see this possibly happening. And yeah, I should have put some money on it. You're absolutely right. Let's move to some other fights here. Let's move to some other fights. Excuse me, right quick. I didn't see this fight, so I'm gonna rely on you, on the both of you, Gail and Daniel. Whoever wants to jump in on this fight, you can. Giovani Santillan, I think he's a local welterweight prospect out of the San Diego area. Fought former lightweight champion Antonio DeMarco, and from all indications, I've read about the fight. Santillan undefeated, but he had his problems in there with DeMarco, who, from what I've read, from what I understand, excuse me, put up a spirited effort. Santillan had to work and work hard for this win. He ended up getting a decision, but it was a pretty rough go for him. Is my account of my reading of this fight off here?
Nope, not off at all. I was calling this the Stay Classy Battle of San Diego because DeMarco has relocated here, and Santillan is a local product out of City Boxing Gym. And Santillan's one of these guys who sat out for close to 2 years over contract issues. So here he is, you know, at a point in his career where he thought he was going to be at maybe 25 or 6, and he's 28. So a little bit old, long in the tooth for a prospect. Still, he's got 24 fights behind him, but not the biggest power puncher. He's an attrition kind of guy. And for whatever reason, he could not really hurt DeMarco, and DeMarco couldn't miss, just couldn't miss. Now, DeMarco didn't have the power to put him away, or this fight wouldn't have gone the distance. But the longer the fight went on, the more you could see DeMarco's body language, confident, coming right at him, standing right in front of him. He's absolutely not afraid of him whatsoever. Santillan was, you know, kind of perplexed by him, I think. He really couldn't lay a hand on him, but he did keep the work rate up. He you know, did what he could. He couldn't put him away. He couldn't really hurt him. And it looked like it was going to be, you know, a fairly close decision for DeMarco. Nope, Santillan gets the nod, much to the surprise, I think, of a lot of folks ringside. The broadcast team was surprised. I was surprised. DeMarco's team was pissed. That's what happens sometimes in Las Vegas in a close fight and with no crowd there to really tip the judges off. Sometimes that weights them a little more heavily toward what is or isn't going on with these guys. I'm not sure if it was a matter of it was just so close they went for the guy who is younger with an undefeated record. I mean, sometimes it is that much of a coin toss. It's a shame for DeMarco. He really did earn it, in my opinion. Not a robbery, not one of these things where it was a, you know, crazy swing on the cards. It was close, but Santillan gets out. He gets his hide out of the bubble with his O alive.
So you wouldn't put him in, you would say he's pretty far off of other welterweight prospects like a Rashidi Ellis or Boots Ennis or Virgil Ortiz.
Oh yeah, not even in the same league. And I will say this, to his credit, after the fight, he said, you know, I've got a lot to work on. I know it. I'm gonna get a look at this fight. I'm gonna really study up. I'm gonna get back in the gym and get to work. And that's exactly the right attitude. I applaud him for that, saying, you know, he found some of my flaws. I'm gonna work on it. That's the only way he can fix them. So a plus for him in that department.
Your thoughts, Daniel?
Who said we weren't going to get any gift decision in this era of the crowdless fights? But yeah, that was pretty much it. Like the decision should have went to DeMarco. It was pretty close though on the cards. He did win, but as far as being a contender, like those guys you mentioned, Boots Ellis, Virgil Ortiz, like I said, they are way above his league right now. He has to work on a lot to even to the face of being a contender right now. Particularly when you're finding somebody like DeMarco who, let's face it, has been pretty bad for the past few years. So the best thing to do probably for him would be, to definitely work on it, get a couple of other into it before you start getting into, probably next year, start getting into fights where you can really gauge if he's actually a contender or not. And I think Mike froze.
Sorry, I was on mute. My bad, y'all. I'm going back to you, Daniel. Going back to a fight, I should admit I forgot to put in the docket. Gabriel Flores Jr. Light junior welterweight prospect out of the Central California area, Stockton, in the same area that you see Ramirez, the junior welterweight champion, Jose Ramirez, the junior welterweight champion from that same part of the state in California. Fought a guy by the name of Ruiz. He won, put Ruiz down in round 2. I admit that it was a meh performance for me, but afterwards he talked about he was coming into the bout had a back injury, was dealing with the back injury, kind of re-injured it in the round that he knocked down Ruiz. In spite of given that backdrop, your thoughts of him, I'm like, okay, he's decent, but to me, he's a bit one-dimensional, and I say that because he was basically an outside fighter in this fight. He just basically did the same thing over and over. I didn't see much of a mid-range game. I saw no inside game. And I say, yes, he had a back injury, but despite that, the kid still has some work to do. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it was. We have to remember he was put on the spot because of the Pedraza situation, what happened in his fight. So he could put in a little bit of spotlight main event draws in there. You see that he definitely still has a ways to go as far as, like I said, being ready to be in that conversation. Was it a good showing considering the circumstances? Better than what a lot of people expected. Did the news of the back injury come out of nowhere? Yeah. But did he get the job done? Yes. But just like what we talked about in the last fight, you have to now know that these are steps you need to work on, because you're stepping into a division landscape with the 2 or 3 divisions that are pretty much stacked. So you at all times considering what you're facing at 135, 140, 147, or even 130 at this point. The weight.
I go to you, Gail. Am I being too critical here, given the backdrop of the injury he was apparently dealing with before and during the fight?
Well, we don't know the extent of the injury. He claims that he hurt his back in sparring. You know, back injuries can be nasty, really nasty, even one that's relatively minor. You know, anybody who's ever had a hurt back, strained their back, done a little too much gardening or weekend warrior stuff, it can kick your ass. You know, think about anything you might have experienced along those lines, and then think about throwing punches towards somebody. So I'm inclined to give him a little bit of a pass. Top Rank really, really likes this kid. He is very much in the Jose Ramirez mold. Yes, he is also from California's Central Valley, although he's at the far north end from Stockton, famous mainly for Dean Spanos and that, you know, the Spanos family who owns the now Los Angeles Chargers. That's about the most famous other thing to come out of Stockton. Fresno, where Ramirez is located, is about 125, 150 miles south of Stockton, where Flores is. However, Flores is able to do in his hometown in Stockton exactly the same thing that Ramirez can do in Fresno, put butts in the seats. Flores was headlining a card in Stockton and filled an arena of 10,000 people. So Top Rank wants to take care of him, wants to give him time. He has got a fan base really similar and probably somewhat of a crossover with Ramirez. So they'll nurture him along. They'll help him out. He appears to have the right attitude, good work ethic. He's with the fans. He's very involved in his community. All the right things. The tough part is, especially when they start getting up to this level, they've got to have the skills to go with it. So let's hope this was just a pandemic, ring rust performance, colored a little bit by an injury. And his next fight, we'll be able to see, was it sort of a one-off or not?
Last bout we're going to talk about here, quote unquote bout. The fight took place in Mexico City as Emanuel Navarrete, WBO champion at 122 pounds. Let's face it, he fought basically an exhibition, glorified sparring session. Guy by the name of Lopez stopped him, I think in round 6. We can disregard talk. We can not talk much about the fight. The question for me is, in the aftermath, and I'll go to you, Gavin, and you can follow up, Daniel. He got this non-title fight out the way, right? Where do you think he should go? Do you think he should stick around at 122 pounds for unification, or wait for Inoue to move up from 118 pounds? Or should Navarrete, a growing young man, should he start thinking about moving up to 126 pounds where there's spots for him to win a world title, particularly the WBO title, because I don't think Shakur Stevenson is going to stay at that weight, at featherweight, for that much longer. If you were handling the career of Navarrete, where would you go?
Well, depends. A lot of it depends on how is he making the weight. Is he doing okay? Is he struggling? Who's he looking at? What matches can be made? In general, I like guys to move up when they feel like moving up. A lot of them just hang on, and their performance struggles, and they struggle as they're trying to make the weight. It's interesting, again, we have this period we've never been through before where a lot of these guys haven't been in the gym and they're making, essentially these sparring club style fights, not real concerned about anybody staying in their regular weight class. So they're all trying themselves up a few pounds, up a notch. And a lot of them, like Shakur, he fights at 130 because he's the first guy out of the gate, and that was the right thing to do. And he had been struggling a little bit. He says he could still make 126, and I'm sure he could. Then they fight at that upper, one division up and think, damn, this is pretty good. And I didn't have to starve myself, and I felt strong. And yeah, I see almost everyone out of this era, other than the elite guys who just know what it takes to just bear down and get it done, and it's worth it to them at the level they're at. Maybe he moves up. The one thing I like about Navarrete is, okay, was this fight all that? No, it was frankly pretty darn ugly. But that man will stay busy no matter what. Could we please get a little bit of a transplant of that attitude toward almost everybody else? He doesn't give a damn who's standing across from him. He only cares that he's standing in the center of the ring. Here's the bell, and he's in that ring 4 or 5 times a year. It's amazing. Good for him. I'm all about it. I'll watch him anytime. Even after, even though he's looking at a guy like Uriel Lopez, and really in Mexico City, you couldn't find better than a 13-1 guy off the street, please.
I personally think he is having issues making 122 pounds. His last fight, though he won 11th round stoppage over, I think, a Filipino fighter by the name of Santissima. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing his name wrong. He won in 11, but I didn't think he looked good for the majority of that bout. He just won it because he was the bigger, stronger guy. I know you got fighters at 122 pounds, Daniel. Ray Vargas. You got MJ Akhmadaliev, who has the BA and IBF titles, but given promotional red tape in boxing business, you don't know if you're going to get a unification bout against those guys, and you don't know when, in a way, moves up to 122 pounds, if he ever moves up to 122 pounds. You just don't know. So for me, because he's a growing young man, I think he should move up sooner than later. He weighed in at 127 for this fight against Lopez. He looked good at the weight. He looked strong at the weight. Um, I say, I say, if you want to get another title defense just to get one, okay, fine. But going into as we head into 2021, I think the time is now for him to move up.
Yeah, if I were his management team, like I say, considering that you don't have a lot of room, and more than likely you're not going to be able to train as hard as you wanted to stay at 122. I'll make the jump. I'll make it now. Give yourself a little bit more leeway when it comes to training, and get yourself tested when it comes into at that weight class. Because while you may wait for, in a way, you mentioned it, Mike, he might not move up, and all the other, and then you mentioned it, promotional issues. Ray Vargas, the closest would have been Ray Vargas before he went to PB to Al. So at the end of the day, there's very, very few options still, because you're still running into some of the same issues at featherweight. But what featherweight would give you, like I said, it's a little more flexibility and let you preserve a little bit more, especially now. Don't really know how hard you can actually train, because I really doubt anybody right now is actually getting a full training camp.
How I'm going back to you, Daniel. Assuming he moves up to 126 pounds, let's just say at the beginning of 2021. Um, Given the current lot there now, uh, uh, how would you compare? How would you compare Navarrete to the present day featherweight champions?
He has to work rate. Like I said, he has to work rate to get things handled. He has a style that can confound a lot of the contenders in that area. But you just have to test it at this point. You have to test his chin, because we don't know if he can handle a featherweight punch, especially when those punches, let's say, can come from a Shakur, even Shakur. Let's set the bar pretty high. Since we even know we're probably not going to have this fight against Gary Russell Jr. So that's some of the things that you have to come into. You have to test. But as far as work rate, as far as skill set, you can compete with the top of the featherweights in that area.
Let's move on to some news here. I'm going to you on this one, Gail. Let's start with some women's boxing news here. Um, we were all anticipating a bout between undisputed lightweight champion Katie Taylor and current featherweight champion Amanda Serrano. Um, since the end of our show last week, there's been a lot of talk about whether this fight is going to happen, whether it's not going to happen. There was a quote unquote press release from Serrano's manager, Jordan Maldonado, basically saying that they're pulling out of the fight due to money issues, due to a reduction in the salary they were supposed to receive. Um, Lou DiBella has disputed this. Um, for those who don't know, I write for Three Kings Boxing. I've been trying to reach out to Mr. Maldonado. I've been unable to get in contact with him to get his side of the story. So I'm just saying, because I haven't been able to get out to you, the article I wrote for Three Kings Boxing, it stands. You want to clarify, you know where to reach me. I'm just putting it out there. But anyway, what do you make of this dust up regarding the future of Taylor and Serrano? I should make note that promoter Eddie Hearn from Matchroom, he has said the fight is a go. As I said, Lou DiBella, he's disputed the story and what was said in the press release. What do you make of all of this?
Lots of finger pointing, lots of disagreement about how it all came down, who talked to who. Lou DiBella, who's never shy about a quote or explaining a story, ever says, nah, that's BS. They're claiming that she was offered less money. He said a money discussion never even took place at all. That makes sense. Honestly, when Lou starts talking, you know, he generally doesn't get caught up in telling tales. Usually when he talks, it's pretty straight up. So, you know, it's up to Serrano, Maldonado, and that camp to prove him wrong, in my opinion. It's a shame. And, you know, just because it's two female champions doesn't mean they don't yap at each other and have disagreements and point fingers just like the guys do. And we have had plenty of fights break down because the fighters and their camps don't get along, don't like each other, and then they end up coming together later down the road. Will that happen here? I don't know. The problem is that on the women's side, the highest ends of competition in all the divisions, you know, you just have fewer players. You have fewer options. You know, the top of the heap champions have to really scramble to find good opponents. You know, the men have just so many more directions to go. You're just simply fewer women at that level. So when a fight like this falls apart, it's a bigger deal, unfortunately, on the women's side, because there isn't a lot of ready talent to step up and substitute. You know, hopefully everything will calm down. Maybe they both walk away for now and then realize, you know, they got to play nice with each other and got to figure out how to make it happen, because they really don't have a lot of other places to go. If they want to make some good money, you know, this is a headlining main event women's fight. There aren't many of those legitimately who could carry a card, and they can. So, you know, ladies, you're the boss. Tell your managers to get their shit together, please, and get this deal done.
I go to you, Daniel. In the press release, from Taylor's manager Maldonado, he said there's still options for them at 126 pounds. They can yoke for unification there. Fine, but you're not getting the high profile bout, and more importantly, you're not getting the money that you would make in a fight versus Katie Taylor. So, just like I asked Gail, I'll ask you right now: what do you make of this situation, this very fluid situation?
Well, this is a situation where he talks, and as money is talking right now, and that's happening, a lot of people putting more things in the guarantee, because unfortunately, let's face it, one of Serrano's other avenue is not, unfortunately, going to come up fruitfully anytime soon. And by that, I mean MMA, because I think she was working in Bellator, and Bellator isn't exactly I could see this fight happen probably later on in the year, probably when things get settled a little bit more, because as far as women's sports go, this is one of the money fights. This is one of the fights that You cannot hold on. You cannot really just marinate it in a way. This is something that has to happen, that you have to put the foot forward. But just like with all things, when it comes to boxing, it all comes down to who's getting the most money. And location is probably going to determine who gets the most money.
If you were a betting man, I go back to you on this one, Daniel, and then you can follow up, Gail. If you were a betting man, do you think this fight will happen this year?
No, because it is a big money fight. I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think they'll wait probably till early 2021 when, depending on where you are, you could probably get a crowd going and when it can get in cake on, because everything next, it's like real estate, location, location, location. If you are going to go in the UK direction, you definitely want to have fans there. You know it's going to be overwhelmingly for Taylor. If you have to fight in the US, particularly here in New York, the Paricos will come out for Serrano.
Hell yes, they will.
Yeah, so it mainly depends on it, but you need that crowd. You need that revenue in order to make this happen. So I don't see it happening this year, unfortunately. It's one of those things where as long as we're in this era where we're not going to have large crowds, not even, let's say, like to get 500 or 1,000 people in an area with safe social distancing guidelines in place, I don't see it happening.
Do you see this fight happening, Gail, in 2020 or ever?
Okay, so two different questions. Do I see it happening in 2020? No, I do not. Daniel's right. This is a fight that has gate potential to make some money. If you put it in Belfast, London, New York, that's a big draw. And I will say, especially in the UK, this is a draw. This is a 12,000, 15,000, 20,000 people in the stands kind of fight, especially in Ireland. So this year, no, because this year, the pandemic gets a say in virtually every fight. And we do not know what's going to happen over the summer, over the fall months. We're seeing a lot of crazy numbers and graphs up and down. And the truth is, our friends in the European Union, UK, have done a lot better job squelching this down than we have in the United States. Funny enough, right now, save for the tri-state area who got their act together. But this is all very temporary. We have to remind ourselves right now, we have a snapshot for right now. We don't know what's going to happen by Labor Day, Thanksgiving, beginning of the year. And plans are going to be hard to make no matter what. Next year, yes, this is a makeable fight. Next year, it's makeable. These women have every motivation in the world to get it done. It's a legacy fight. The clock's ticking more on Taylor than it is on Serrano. So if there are concessions to be made to get it done, my guess is it is probably on Taylor's side. So we'll see. Disappointment that it's not happening this year, but frankly, it was a bit of a surprise it was even under consideration, in my opinion.
Move on to some news and kind of what's going on, Emma. Shout out to B Marsh. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. Surprise development that took place yesterday. Daniel, I'll go back to you. This goes to the smaller weights when it comes to the men. The smallest weight in boxing, the smallest division in boxing, excuse me, as Menayothin, the WBC champion at 105 pounds, surprisingly announced his retirement yesterday at age 34. Put a post on his Facebook page. The reasons that he's said that he's retiring basically because, from what I've read after translating, is that the physical toll the sport took on him was just too much. at this point, and that he needs some time. He wanted to retire. He wanted to rest his body. The level of surprise from you, given this announcement from the Thai champion yesterday.
Well, it's not really that much of a surprise now because according to the WBC, he's not retired. He's scheduled to fight. This sounds to me like this is some political back and forth. Between. Okay. Can you guys hear me now? Because my computer started acting a little bit weird.
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, yeah. No, it's not surprising right now because, like I said, the WBC came out yesterday and said, nope, he's still fighting. So I have a feeling that, like I said, this is just a power play involving probably trying to lessen the fee. But it does give him a headline, though. 54-0. I'm just afraid of who's looking at that number, 54-0, and what that person's ego might do, looking at a number that is bigger than his own.
What are you saying, Daniel? What are you saying?
Oh, come on now, Daniel. Who could be jealous of that? Who possibly could be jealous of that?
Okay, look, this year's already been bad. This year's already been bad. Yeah, okay, been bad. We do not need the nightmare scenario that we all know can happen to happen. I'm just trying to avoid that. 2020 is already screwed up. Like between the news today of assaulting his battalion today, being charged for it, between this, the Rona, the murder hornets, read the nightmare scenario, but we all know who we're talking about. I don't have to mention the guy's name, Floyd, but we could just.
If you watched him, if you followed him, Gail, your thoughts on the little man from Thailand deciding to call it a day?
Well, Thai fighters, they live in an interesting little bubble universe. Long before the pandemic, the Thai boxing scene is almost a scene all to itself. And a handful of these guys will emerge and burst out like a Srisakat Sorang Visai into the more general European American fight scene. So it's rough and ready stuff. It's frequently outdoors. They fight a lot. That's how a guy gets up to 50 fights at this point of his career. And he's I think not quite 30. So this is very old school looking stuff. By the way, for those who are thinking, okay, who's Michael talking about? He's frequently known, especially in English language markets, by his English nickname, which is Knockout CP Freshmart. And somebody will explain to me later how Thai fighters get their nicknames. There's some really crazy ass stuff out there. So Knockout CP Freshmart.
Wait a minute.
Oh no! I take that back.
CP Freshmart is the.
I do have to.
Yeah, Knockout CP Freshmart.
Freshmart is my boy.
Knockout CP Freshmart is actually the WBA champion.
Yeah, you're right. He is in the same division, however, the minimum weight or strawweight division. Boxing's hard enough to make a buck in, right? In a lot of these Asian countries where they have their own little bubble universe, it's even more difficult. If you can make a living doing almost anything else, it's not a bad idea. Now, is he trying to increase his money? Is he thinking, I'm more of a draw? I deserve, I deserve to make people, miss me. Who knows what the strategy is? But when a division champion walks away, that is news, and he's making news.
And last bit of news here.
To
ahead,
answer
Daniel.
Gail's question, I think I said to answer Gail's question when it came, I think it's because in Thai culture they don't really have formal names, so a lot of time or just finding names for places. It's one of the reasons why when you look at Thai fighters, a lot of times their last names is the name of the gym that they're working at, because they formally, I think in Thai culture they don't really have last names per se, so they can play around with it, and it's one of the reasons why it hurts.
Yeah, no, I have heard that, and pardon me, listeners, for the confusion in the nicknames, but yeah, I mean, really though, come on, can Floyd possibly in any way be worried about his quote legacy with this guy? I don't think so.
Yeah, indeed, you're right, Daniel. A lot of times they'll Thai fighters. It's a tradition that they will adopt a name of a gym, a name that a manager gives to them. I've seen that before, studying fighters, watching fighters from that country. I remember Michael Carbajal when he won his first world title in 1990 against a guy by the name of Mungshai Kitikasim. That was not his name. His real name was Natavud Nantanimal or something to that effect. Mungshai Kitikasim was basically one name was the name of like a nightclub, and the other name was the name of a gym. So you're absolutely right. That actually happens. Most Thai fighters do not use their real names, be it Knockout CP Freshmart or the champion who just retired, or even the great Calcite Galaxy. That Calcite Galaxy was not his real name, folks. Let's move on to last bit of news here, and that is concerning, once again, the little guys. Gus, you're in the chat. You're talking about this now. I'll post your comments in a bit. As news broke actually technically broke yesterday. I wrote about it for Three Kings today, that looks like we're going to have a unification bout at 112 pounds, Gail, as Julio Cesar Martinez, who made a big splash last year, his fight against Charlie Edwards, which he was technically disqualified, or it was a no contest due to a shot that Martinez landed on Edwards in round 3 when Edwards was down. He was en route to stopping Edwards in the eyes of many. In December of that year, last year, he eventually won the WBC belt, then because it became vacant because Edwards, let's face it, he didn't want to fight. He didn't want to fight Martinez again. He basically said, hell no, I don't want to fight him again. The title became vacant. Martinez won the belt. He defended it earlier this year, and I want to say February. Well, it was announced that Martinez, he will fight WBA 112-pound champ Artem Dalakian. Fight's going to take place August 15th in China. Don't know the exact city in China, but Martinez and his trainer confirmed it today to a Latino news outlet. The fight is going to happen. They're going to begin camp next week. Thoughts on, unification? That's always a thing that all boxing fans love. And even in the era of COVID-19, we're finally going to see a halfway good fight. Your thoughts?
Well, once again, it's on the books. It's planned. The pandemic gets a vote these days, but the deal's made. It's on the books for August 15th. It's a great matchup. It's a unification matchup. Despite him being disqualified, Martinez absolutely was winning and had won that fight. His overexuberance caused him to throw a punch he shouldn't have thrown. after the fact, and it screwed him over. But he did it to himself, and got DQ'd for it. But the talent was clear. It had to give him a boost of confidence, even though I'm sure he was just damn mad at himself, and he should have been. So I like the matchup. Unification really matters. Everybody can get very hot and bothered about, oh, perfect records, no losses. We on this show have talked about it. Many others, I'm glad to see talk about it more and more. And I think in the pandemic era, it's becoming more important because we don't have a choice. Those zeros matter less than how tough did you match yourself? How did you test yourself? What were you willing to do or try? What chances did you take that paid off? What really matters is, do you have the balls to go for the unification? To put your belt up against somebody else's belt. Not fighting for a vacant title. Sure, that's nice, and a lot of guys get their belt that way, but they know deep down in their heart, the way it really matters is when you take somebody's belt from them, right? Whether you've got yours on the line as well, it becomes a bigger deal. So I am way more impressed with a guy with a loss or two on his record who can unify a division than somebody who's dodged a lot of really talented guys on the way up. And we all know plenty of people who've done that. I get it when you're building up a youngster's confidence, but eventually, you need to put up or shut up. And some of these guys just won't do it. I still, to this moment, have far more respect for Regis Prograis facing Josh Taylor in losing. I don't really give a damn that there's a loss on his record. He still is a fighter I want to see. He's still willing to test himself. He's all about it. He's still all about it. Doesn't make any difference to me. That's the way guys become legends in the sport. They test every bit of skill they've got. So we need to see more fights like this, and we need to support more fights like this. And we need to be a little less worried about those numbers, those little numbers.
I'll read a comment here in the chat. Gus from Corruption in Boxing said he's disappointed. Marudi, for those who don't know, he's talking about Marudi, who is the IBF champion at 112 pounds. Terrific South Africa. I call him the Azuma Nelson of our time. He was calling for a fight against Martinez. He was hoping for that unification. True, Gus, but in the write-up that I submitted for Three Kings Boxing, you can find it on threekingsboxing.com. You can check it out after the show. One of the things that Martinez said is his goal to become undisputed and win all 4 titles before eventually moving up to 115. So hopefully that fight will happen. Gus went on to say that he respects that, but he says the Dalakian needs to be disposed ASAP. He ain't done nothing. Ain't done shit since he beat Brian Valorian to win the title. But I go to you, Gus. Your thoughts on this fight? Your thoughts on the fight, and do you think it would have been better for Martinez to try to seek a bout with Marudi Muthalani? Excuse me, that's his name, Marudi Muthalani, rather than in the eyes of Gus and some settle for a unification bout against a Dalakian? I don't think Daniel's there right now, so I go to you, Gail. You pick up that question, please.
Repeat the question, Dalakian.
I thought you said Gus. I'm sorry.
No, I was reading some comments that Gus has said, and the question was for you. Do you think your thoughts on the fight, and do you think that Martinez should have sought a bout against Muthalani as opposed to what Gus will probably feel and others settled for a bout against a Dalakian?
I don't think you can call it settling. He's the WBA World Flyweight title holder. He's had some good outings. He did deliver quite the beatdown to Brian Valoria. I was ringside for that fight. I was actually surprising. You know, Valoria has had his ups and downs, but he's always delivered really good performances in general. In fact, he was in some ways getting better as he got a little older. But yeah, Dalakian absolutely took care of business. So he's been fighting in Ukraine. You know, again, here we've got this issue of where are these guys based and what are the travel restrictions? What's the possibility of one country having a flare up, having problems with travel? Isaac Chilema couldn't get out of South Africa for a fight here early in the pandemic. I am thinking, the organizers are looking at this. They want to do it in China. Who's going to be able to get to China from wherever they are now? Apparently, my guess is that it's going to be easier to bring Dalakian in logistically from Ukraine. So, that may be a big factor. We can talk all about these fights as if situation was normal, as if it was 6 months ago, but it's just not. And a lot of the considerations they've got to take into account now, the practical logistics are so different, so complicated. So my guess is that they're having more luck getting guys out of Ukraine. The Lomachenkos just finally got out of there. They're self-quarantining, but apparently the gates are open there. That's my guess as to why the Dalakian fight was made. And hey, he's got a belt. It's a unification fight. I'm fine with it.
Another issue, Gus, is if you're still in the chat, as why a fight with Martinez and Moloney may not take place right now, and you can respond to this as well, Daniel, is the issue of money. Keep in mind, Moloney is arguably the highest paid flyweight in the world right now. He's making high six, not just high six, but seven figures now. When he fought Yagashi December of last year, he made well over $1 million for that fight. So it may be an issue of Hearn and Matchroom at this point is not willing to put up the necessary dollars to bring Moloney here or anywhere else for that fight to happen. Because if he made $1 million to fight Yagashi in Japan, him and his team is probably going to ask for similar numbers to fight a Martinez. So that being me another reason, so yeah, your thoughts on that, Daniel?
Yeah, some of it is really, really plays a factor into what we're doing here. Between that and some travel restrictions not being waived, really gonna play a factor into seeing a lot of these things made. This is why, like, when I see things like unification fights being talked about, even like just big in general fights coming out, you put a bit of big hesitation because there's a lot of moving pieces. Like especially when it comes to the fights and events, one of the reasons I didn't mention this when we talked about Katie Taylor and Serrano. Like, one thing that you can decide to go into it is, sadly enough, going to places that are neutral that could have the money to, like the Middle East. This areas where you can try to recoup a lot of those costs. If those are not an option, there's, like I said, I'm not surprised by everything, and it's the main reason why I don't see a lot of the big fights, even if they're not big in the sense of the fact that the mainstream fans coming to light.
Let's move on to discuss. See if there's any news stories right quick before I move on to preview some fights over this coming week. Any other news that you guys want to talk about before we move on to preview some things that's happening tomorrow and this weekend? Oh no. One more thing. I got one more thing, Gail and Daniel. Looks like we have a date for Usyk and Chisora, October 24th. Your thoughts?
Love that these guys are talking. Love the fight. Once again, I'm sorry, guys, if I'm on repeat for every damn one of these stories. The pandemic gets a vote. It's June 22nd today. We're talking about October. Fingers crossed. At least they're talking.
And you just mentioned. Go ahead, Daniel.
I completely air the same sentiment.
And I think you mentioned
no, like I said,
I
whole sentiment right there. As unfortunate, yes. Say it again.
A little bit of delay between you and myself, Daniel. Go ahead. I was talking. A little bit of delay on our end, so go ahead.
Oh no, I completely agree with Gail. Like right now, we don't have anything that could give us an assurance that things are going to be made into it. And Usyk and Cesar would be a decent gate fight, especially if it's in UK, because Chisora is like you can test it. He's a draw. He's a good, like I said, he is a good fighter, and we know Usyk can. The Ukrainian fans, the fans from that part of the Eastern Bloc, to the table, but the scale puts it, the pandemic gets a vote. The Rona gets a vote in this case, and unfortunately, the Rona might vote no in the way things are looking.
Okay, let's move on to some to preview some fights here that's happening. We're recording this on excuse me, June 22nd. Fight's going to be happening this week on the 23rd, I believe the 26th or 20. Well, on tomorrow as well as Thursday and Saturday of this week. Let's talk about the Maloney brothers, fighting brothers out of Australia. The Moloney brothers out of Australia. Andrew Moloney, he's going to be defending his interim title at 115 pounds tomorrow night against a guy by the name of Franco. Gail, if you've seen the Moloney brothers, let's start with Andrew first. Your thoughts of him, Andrew, who's if Chocolatito and Gallo Estrada, assuming they fight later on this year, assuming that fight gets made, it looks like Maloney, should he win this fight against Franco, will face the winner of a possible fight between Gallo and Chocolatito early next year. So if you've seen Andrew Maloney fight, your thoughts on him?
I've seen very little of Andrew Maloney fight. I have seen a bit of it. Interestingly enough, his nickname is the Monster. You know, did he not know? Trying to think who grabbed that first. You know, I'm going to say this, and I don't want the listener to get the wrong idea when I say this. You know, I'm not sure whether we have a Jeff Horn situation here or not. In that, you know, he has been sequestered very much in the Southern Hemisphere. He literally has only had, before now, one fight outside Australia, and that was in Chile. So he's never been north of the equator for a fight. So you have to ask yourself, you know, what's been the quality of the opposition that he's faced? Is when he gets to more of a test, how's he going to do? Now, we look at Joshua Franco's record. It's 16-1-2. He's 24. He's a youngster out of San Antonio, Texas. He's kind of part of the Texas boxing scene. Franco's no joke. Franco has had some absolute crazy wars with opponent Oscar Negrete, who fights for Golden Boy. They had a trilogy of fights back to back to back from the end of 2018 through the end of last August. Barn burner, 96, 94, 10-round fights, split decisions all the way. So he took 2 out of the 3. Franco is nothing if not tough as nails. He's had only 1 loss by KO. That was early in his career, kind of a crazy thing. He had a fight in Puerto Rico. I'm disinclined to be much concerned about that fight. I think Maloney's going to have a real test with Franco. I think he'll win. I do think he's going to see it through, but I think we're going to be able to see what Andrew Maloney's really made of against Joshua Franco. He's one of these tough little guys. He's not an easy out. Are we going to have another Michael Plania? I don't know. It's very interesting, well worth watching. On the show last week, we all said, do not overlook Plania. I find myself saying, do not overlook Joshua Franco.
Gail's hinting at a possible upset here. Daniel, your thoughts?
Well, as we've seen last week, anything can happen. Like we saw that could have been a showcase. Become an upset is very, very open to me, and that's when it comes to the Maloney brothers. Are some flaws that there need to be adjusted, and Franco could just be the guy that bothers that it does cost them in the fight.
On the undercard of Maloney and Franco, you have Christopher Diaz. Diaz, correct me if I'm wrong, he's the guy who fought Kanzu for the vacant belt 2 years ago now. He lost. He's on the comeback, highly thought of prospect. Your thoughts, Daniel, on this fight against Sanchez? He was a highly thought of prospect up until the Kanzu fight, but highly thought of prospect. Where do you see him following what many felt was a surprising loss to Zoo?
This could be a bounce back. This becoming a good bounce back fight to get his motor back in there. Like I said, it was a surprise loss, so you had to build it back up, and it's a really good chance to do it.
Your thoughts, Gil?
So I am double checking the records here. I do not believe these two have fought each other. I am thinking that if you're thinking a couple years back, the only fights that Kanzu's had in the United States, his most recent fight, he fought out at Fantasy Springs last November against Manny Robles III, which was an absolutely great fight.
I could be confusing him with someone else.
He did win a unanimous decision, pretty much a blowout over Manny Robles. I mean, he just took him to school for 12 rounds.
No, I'm confusing. I'm sorry. I know who I'm talking about now. I'm talking about Christopher Diaz. He lost to Ito for the belt at 130 pounds.
Yes, he did.
130 pounds. My apologies for everyone.
There you go. Okay, I thought, all right. I defer to my fellow panelists here and thinking, I don't know. Yeah, Diaz lost not quite a blowout decision against Matsuyuki Ito. That was in 2008 in Florida. Yeah, in a 12-round fight. Although Diaz was down once in the 4th round, but hey, he got to his feet. He threw the final bell, and then he did lose what was a blowout to Shakur Stevenson last year. But he gives a good effort. He has a good work rate. He's solid, and again, once again, we point out the obvious about the situation we find ourselves in. The pandemic. We don't have a lot of choices off the menu like we used to. Guys that say they're ready, guys that will deliver a work rate and effort, put on some entertainment, willing to fight for whatever purse they're offered, frankly, willing to do it without a full training camp. That's not an unlimited list. Certainly not an unlimited list of names that's acceptable for a national cable television broadcast. So good for him. He's getting a shot. All these guys that are getting a shot need to try to make the best of it. And Jason Sanchez is definitely a worthy opponent. He's out of New Mexico. Has he fought anybody you know? Yes, he has one loss. It's to Oscar Valdez in about this time last year. And he was knocked down, but he, again, much like Diaz, he stayed on his feet and made it to the final bell. So we've got two guys who both went through that kind of similar experience, clearly going to lose in a 12-round fight. Could have hidden behind the manager, the corner, calling the fight, since they're clearly losing on the cards. They didn't. They stuck it out to the final bell. They gave themselves the best shot. So now they're going to get a shot against each other. And sometimes these fights turn out to be pretty damn good. Let's remind ourselves how good that Artem Lopez fight turned out to be. I think this might be another one just like that.
Indeed. I'm going back to you, Gail, to talk about this next bout. Andrew is fighting tomorrow on the 23rd. On the 25th, his brother Jason, he's going to be fighting fighter by the name of Baez. Jason Maloney, for those who remember, very good account of himself in a close loss to Emanuel Rodriguez for the IBF title at 118 pounds a couple of years back. This was before Rodriguez got blown out by Inoue last year in May. You're talking about how Andrew Moloney needs to be on upset alert against Franco. I would argue that Moloney, who's fighting Baez, a late substitute, I think he is the one who's going to be who should be on upset alert. And the reason is the fact that Baez is the naturally bigger guy. I think he's ranked number 5 by the BA at 122 pounds. And anytime you are 4 inches taller, which Baez is, 5'9", going to be fighting at bantamweight-ish. And anytime you got Joel Diaz in your corner, you must be a pretty good fighter. So for me, I'm like, okay, Jason, you're highly ranked. You yourself are not too far off from a world title shot. You need to be on upset alert. He needs to be on upset alert just as much as his brother.
I think maybe even more. Here's an interesting fact. So Moloney on Thursday night was supposed to fight the guy who was in the trilogy of fights with Joshua Franco and was at the one end of the 2-1 in the trilogy, Oscar Navarrete. Barn burner fights. Well, it turned out in his medical exam, probably due to all the battering around those two did to each other, Navarrete has a detached retina, so he's out on medical. So here's this last-minute substitute. Yeah, that could be a problem, Height could really be a problem. Is this going to be, a Ray Vargas sort of guy that Moloney's doesn't see coming at him? Could be. Does Baez fight tall? But you're right. The X factor is Joel Diaz. Joel Diaz now in Indio, nearby to Vegas. His guys are ready. They're close. They're getting a lot of work. And Diaz has that interesting trio of fighters from Uzbekistan who are just ripping it up. And their work ethic is absolutely unbelievable, without question. I mean, they work, they live, they sleep, they eat it. They never take a day off. They're in competition with each other constantly, and that rubs off on the other guys in the gym. It just does. They see these guys succeeding because they work hard. It's their job. They take it seriously. They understand they are professionals and this is what they need to do. So you have other guys in the gym watching these guys, watching their stablemates succeed, learning from that. Again, the intrigue of some of these bouts is, the upset special, the unpredictable nature of some of these matchups that we really don't know what kind of shape they're in. We don't know where their head's at. Credit to the Maloney brothers for making this trip over, going into quarantine, fighting in the bubble to get their shot on U.S. television. We'll see. We'll see if they bit off more than they can chew.
Should Jason be on just as much of an upset alert, Daniel, as Gail is predicting Andrew is, or should be?
Yeah, take that into account because of last minute replacements. Because you never know what you're going to get on last minute replacements. Look at it. But the Maloney brothers, to me, I'm a little bit more high on Jason. So I'm not going to be surprised if he does pull it out, but you're always going to have to be an upset alert, especially at this stage. Like, they did do what they're supposed to do. They did do how they were going to get there, but you never know at this stage. Like we mentioned, last week was a perfect example. Just takes the right opponent, the right skill set, and the right punches to derail you when it comes to you got a shot or being in consideration. So he definitely should be an upset alert. But more like I said, at least Jason would probably be the better off of the two Maloney brothers to stave off the upset.
Last bout on the docket here before we start to shut things down. Miguel Berchelt, WBC champion at 130 pounds on the 27th in Mexico, fighting a guy by the name of Valenzuela. I'm going back to you, Daniel. Oleksandr Valenzuela. Am I wrong here to think that what we saw with Navarrete in what was nothing more than a glorified sparring session, is Bob Arum top rank providing the same thing he with Berchelt in this fight against Valenzuela?
Pretty much. It's not more just for him and Zanfer as well. They kind of in a way because we know Berchelt has been one of the people gunning for Lomachenko, and you'd have to keep that up going into it because he, as far as listing the opponents going after Loma, if you don't want one of your other guys right now, they're maybe too young, like a Stevenson, going after it at the moment. It's good to do it. It's good to get these guys active. And as long as they're active when it comes to be fine in that area, like I said, it's not a major fight, but at least they're getting work. At least they're getting rounds in.
What say you, Gail? Because I'm looking at this record and it's nondescript, just to be polite.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad. First of all, I'm gonna put the credit or blame where it's due. This is a Zanfer promotion. Top Rank simply picking up the Zanfer feed,
You're right.
in coordination. So Zanfer's the matchmaker. But whereas Navarrete's opponent was 13-13, hey, this guy's 21-13 and 4. But he has some interesting names on his resume. Yes, he's lost to them all, but he fought Zhu Shiming, believe it or not. He was the opponent in Shiming's debut in Macau. There's a stat for you. So that's one of his losses. And then he went on and he fought Navarrete 8-round fight, he actually went the difference against Navarrete. Isn't that interesting? It was a blowout. It was 80-72 on all 3 cards, but he made it to the final bell. So that's something. His last notable opponent was Jonah Carroll, and he did lose. So, he's got a little bit more of a resume, a little bit more. I will say this for him. Here's a kid, and I'm going to be able to say kid, who's got 38 fights. He's 25 years old. I'll say he's been busy. So, yeah. Will it be much different from the Navarrete fight?
No.
No, not really. I think it'd be a little tougher, but come on. We know
he went a 2-year period from 2015 to 2017 where he lost 8 out of 11 fights. No.
Was it that bad? Yeah, it's probably that bad. But give him credit. He has tested himself. He's not been fighting just local guys.
Well,
they're all in Mexico, but he did run across several names. So here's what that tells me. What it tells me is he earns an honest paycheck, that, he's easy to deal with. He's not a pushover. Clearly, he's not dangerous, although of his 21 wins, 16 have been by knockout. Good for him. He's a step up from Uriel Lopez. Oh, by far. He certainly is. Will the outcome be much different? Nah, the only variable is, how in shape is Berchelt? If Berchelt is even close to being in decent shape, that man is a buzzsaw. So they have to put someone in front of him who will at least stand his ground, or they won't even get a 2-round fight out of it. So we'll see what happens. But
you was going to chime in, Daniel?
He's not Lopez. I'll give him that.
Yeah, first shout out to Gus. Yeah, first shout out to Gus. Tell us how you
really feel
when
about
it comes
Berchelt.
to Berchelt.
Jesus. Yeah. Shame on you, Gus. Shame on you. El Alacron is going to come after you, man. Of course, he can't really defend himself since he's not on the show.
We don't need the algorithm messing up. We don't need.
Easy for Gus to say behind his keyboard.
This is kind of like I forgot what show it was. Let's just face it. Let's put it to you this way. I forgot what movie this was, but we know the scene where they break up and the guy just goes, "You knew this was." This is all that it is. We all know what this is. But
exactly.
The main point of doing it the way they're doing it is to just make guys get into shape. That's the only thing. And if that's the only way to do it at the moment, another guy here earns a paycheck, then that's perfectly fine in that aspect. At least he has a winning record, to say the least, when it comes.
He's got a winning record. And
it's not like Berchelt's fighting. I forgot the guy's name that literally lost. Yep. We have to put it this way. If they wind up picking up the guy who I forgot that lost 200 fights to the point where no athletic commission wanted to work because he knew they were paying him to lose. As long as you don't get that type of guy going into it, this is fine.
Yeah, come on, Gus. I just have one thing to say to you. #RespectBox. This guy is willing to get in the ring. He's been willing to get in the ring with some pretty big names. Yeah, he's lost, but he's earning an honest payday. And I can't say that for a lot of people in this world, particularly in our nation's capital right now.
Yeah. I'm more interested in how Berchelt looks physically. To your earlier point, Gail, what kind of shape is he in? I don't know the contract weight for this bout, but how difficult will it be for Berchelt to get down to that weight? Because we've seen Berchelt outside the ring, and let's just say, he can he can gain, he can put on pounds and can look quite beefy in there. Doesn't always have the greatest discipline in terms of keeping his weight down when he's not fighting. So I just want to see how he looks physically, and assuming he wins, which he should, where he goes from here. Shout out Intangible Boxing News. Thanks for joining us on this show. I think we're going to end matters on that. Unless there's some other fights or whatever you guys want to mention before we decide to shut things down.
I'm just going to leave one comment here. You know, we are being very hard on some of these matchups. Not that they don't deserve a pretty heavy scoop of skepticism, but come on, folks. A lot of sports fans are missing the action in whatever their favorite sport is. Boxing is here. Boxing is giving us 3 cards a week. Only one promoter has managed to get their shit together to give us these fights. I have an enormous amount of respect. I'm willing to give every shred of the doubt to these guys who've been willing to put up with living in the bubble situation in Las Vegas. In Mexico, I'm not quite sure how they're quarantining everybody. They are fighting literally in a TV studio setting. If you saw the card on Saturday, their cameramen and other personnel are practically in hazmat suits down there. Their broadcast team is present behind a wall of plexiglass. You would think they're on the other side of the boards in an NHL game. So props to everybody who's figuring this out, who's making it happen, the guys that are willing to get in there. I truly, performances aside, have enormous respect for all of them. And for the rest of y'all, you know, come on, stop your bitching. Boxing is back.
And I say, you said, come on, Gail. Gus said, come on, Gail. He declined a unification with. Are you talking about Jamel Herring, Gail? I mean, Gus. I'm assuming that's who you're talking about.
Oh, no,
that Berchelt declined
he's talking about Herring. Yeah, he's talking about Herring.
So yeah, I think
that's just more, you know, like you're trying to keep. I'm sorry, no, like I said, that was just keeping everything lined up, not to get the waters a little bit too muddy, because around that weight class we know who the big fish is. So
yeah,
and you got to keep them hungry if certain fight weight class.
Well, and Aram is not going to give up Herring's backstory right now. Herring's a huge draw. Aram is going to protect Jamel Herring for a little while longer before throwing himself in with somebody like Berchelt.
Until he put him in there with Shakur Stevenson. Until he puts him there with Shakur Stevenson, and Stevenson boxes his shoes off.
I think that, and I think you're right. I think that's what's now going to end up happening now that Stevenson is going to come up. I think that is the right matchup, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. And in that particular case, the current pandemic situation is buying them some wiggle time.
Indeed, and we're going to start shutting things down on that note. I'm going to go. First of all, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live YouTube chat. Gus from Corruption and Boxing, Intangible Boxing News, Mello, the homie Emma, B Marsh. I think I'm looking to see who else. Sean Fitzgerald, St. Brit Sports, Olemaka. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Sin. Thanks everybody for joining us on the show. Again, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also subscribe to the show on Spotify, Google Play Music, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. And leave a review on iTunes. 5-star review will get read live on the show. Going to go around the panel here. Begin the show with ladies first. Always end the show with ladies first. And with that being the case, Gail from Communities Digital News. For those who want to talk to Sweet Science, for those who want to talk media, because you do teach media and get paid to teach media, let the folks know where they can find you.
Hey, I love it when people challenge me, argue with me, come at me. You know, as long as you're not trolling, come bring it. You know, sharpen my saw here. I'm at PR Pro San Diego. on social, and my column appears in Community's digital news, which is COM, C-O-M-M, Digi, D-I-G-I News, comdiginews.com.
I'll go to you, Daniel from the Inscriber, for those who want to talk the NBA, want to talk, boxing or the NBA, since it's set to return soon, which is, the more you hear about the situation of COVID-19 in Florida, that's a bit of a shaky move. But yeah, for those who want to talk the sweet science and the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks, you can reach me on Twitter, Marcus99. We're always up, like Gail mentioned, unlike a certain person who's probably hiding in a bunker right now. We're free to talk anytime.
A bunker
in the area. Because luckily we're starting. Because luckily we start building up. But like I said, folks, don't expect the big money fights, unfortunately, this year, at least for the time being.
And here's one thing I promise: you engage with one of us, you want to get into it with us, fair, even-handed discussion, differences of opinion. We're all about it. We do not use tear gas or chemical weapons of any kind.
Or push or purposely send troops on people who are marching peacefully for a photo out at an abandoned church while holding a Bible backwards, upside down.
All opinions welcome. We might take you down a notch, but it'll be a fair fight.
Or claiming that they don't want any more tests to keep the numbers down, which makes completely no sense. But anyway, before I give my spiel, with boxing returning and having a sense of normalcy, lady boxing fans, women who follow the sport in media or fans or bloggers or whatnot, we usually do this show by this time of the year, but because of situations which are out of our control, haven't been able to get this show. Every year we do a all women's episode of Pound for Pound Box Report. So if you are a woman who enjoys the sport, reach out to me on Pound for Pound Box Report Twitter's page, P4P Boxing Report. That's all one word on Twitter. Looking for women who watch this, looking for women to be a part of 2020 edition of Ladies Love Boxing episode, Pound for Pound Box Report. So again, if you're interested, just hit me up personally on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76, or hit me up, Pound for Pound Box Report on Twitter. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to check out all things regarding the show, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxreport.wordpress.com. That is the link. If you're watching live on YouTube, you can also click the description box. It'll provide all the information where to find us all over social media, where to find us on all RSS feed platforms with RSS feeds, where you can donate. Link to my and on the blog page you have all the information, as well as the link to my online coaching page. On the next episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report, we will do a recap of the fight with Berchelt, of the fight featuring the Maloney brothers, Christopher Diaz and Sanchez, and we will do a preview of Alex Salcedo. He's going to be fighting in Vegas on June the 30th. He's going to be fighting a fighter by the name of Fredrickson. And on July 2nd, the aforementioned Jamel Herring, he's making his return to the ring to defend his WBO junior lightweight title against Jonathan Okendo. So that should be a pretty decent bout. So yeah, again, want to thank everybody who joined us in the live YouTube chat. Thank you for your comments and your questions. For Gail for Communities Digital News, for Daniel the Inscriber, I am your host, Michael. This has been episode 290 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night. Justice for Breonna Taylor, by the way.